Hello and welcome to the Tarot Workshop. I'm Suzanne Corby and I've worked with the Tarot for over 20 years, first as a tool for self-development and understanding, and much later reading for others and progressing to teaching, which is still all about learning just on another level. In this workshop, my intention is to help you to connect with the cards yourself. I'm not going to be going into the history or detail all the traditional meanings and spreads. There are so many books out there that can help you discover much more about this fascinating subject for yourself. What I really want to do in this workshop is to help you make the personal connection yourself. A tarot card means whatever you need it to mean when you draw it, and we will all make different associations. I've noticed people who may have a distrust of religion seemingly uncomfortable with the Hierophant. People who find the occult frightening become scared of the Devil card. People who have encountered bad experiences with authority don't feel comfortable with Justice or the Emperor, and so on. And you'll all have your own perspective on all of the cards based on your own experience and understanding, and that will also be subject to change as you progress and learn. So allow your personal intuition to guide you. It's important to listen to this. Always rely on it over and above a traditional meaning, so that if you're reading the cards and you draw the Star card, for example, and you feel quite strongly that the answer for the card itself is perhaps warning you about getting carried away with your head in the clouds or dreams, as opposed to the more traditional meaning of hope and peace, then go with what your intuition is telling you. It's telling you that for a reason at this time, so learn to trust it. And the more you trust it, the more your intuition will speak to you. That's exactly what the tarot is about, connecting with your intuition and opening the doorways of understanding which are locked within us. Now, there's no better way to start than to just get stuck in, so let's dig out the major arcana cards in whatever deck you have with you. I'm working with the Rider-Waite deck. It tends to be the general beginner's deck. It encompasses the basic symbolism that most of the other decks contain. A word on decks. Nowadays there are so many of them containing really beautiful artwork, and although these can be wonderful for meditation or for all other purposes, not all of them always contain the depth of symbolic references that the tarot is so richly well known for. So if you have another deck, just pick it up and start it with me and see how you get on. Let's get familiar with the major cards. One of the ways you can do this is to dwell or meditate on one card at a time. So put all the major arcana cards out in front of you, and let's start at the beginning and just pick up the card of the Fool. Now I'm going to pick up mine and pop it in front of me. I want you to have a good look at it and just really immerse yourself in that card. Look at the scenery. Look at what he's wearing. Look at what he's carrying in his hands. What's the colour saying to you? What about where he is? Does that bother you? Do you feel good about it? Unnerved about it? What's around him? Just dwell on everything that card has. And then close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you are that figure. You are the Fool. You are standing exactly where you saw him in that image. You're holding what he had in his hand. You're doing what he was doing. How do you feel? Do you feel silly? Do you feel aware? Are you carefree? Are you wise? Where are you going? What are you doing? Just dwell on that for a moment. Just really immerse yourself in the experience of taking on the Fool. Then open your eyes and look at the card again. Do you see or understand it any differently? If you thought he looked foolish before, do you think he looks a little bit more brave or daring now? What would it be saying to you if you were asking it for what your lesson was today? What do you think the message would be? Learning to connect with each of the cards in this way is absolutely fundamental to being able to read them in a spread. So take your time with this and really spend time on it. You could do one major arcana card a day and it really wouldn't be an invaluable lesson. The Fool itself can represent a variety of things, from beginning, new changes, independence, taking a leap of faith, to being crazy and a little naive. But take what it tells you, go with what your intuition tells you as to what it represents for the meaning that it has for you today. Let's look at the next card, the Magician. Pick up the card of the Magician, pop it in front of you, and have a good look at it. Again, look at the person, look at the symbolism within the card itself, look at the scenery, look at the colour, draw it all in, and then close your eyes and become the Magician. Feel that sense of authority and power. He's raising his arm up, he's got a wand, clearly he's going to use it, clearly he's competent, clearly he considers he's competent. At what? What is he feeling? How do you feel raising your arm like the Magician with the wand? Think about all the elements on the table in front of him. What's he going to do with them? What are you going to do with them? Do you feel strong? Do you believe in yourself? And then open your eyes and look at it again and see if it makes you feel any different about the card itself. It's all about power and belief in yourself and taking action. Is it telling you at this moment when you draw this card to take action, or is it telling you to believe in yourself? Is it telling you you're fooling yourself? What do you think it means? The Magician represents having all the tools you need at your disposal. Now it's time for you to do something with them. You need to ask yourself, maybe if you pick this card, have you not been using all the tools at your disposal? Are you waiting for the right kind of indication that it's time to act? If you drew a card like the Magician, now would be the time to move. But what do you feel? Let's have a look at the next card, the High Priestess, a card of mystery. Here, dwell on the figure in this card. Look at the pillars on either side of her. Look at what's behind her. Look at what she has in her arms. Look at how she's dressed. What does she make you feel? Are you a little disturbed by her? Are you intimidated by her? Are you intrigued by her? Are you drawn to this card? Or are you a little bit distant from it? And then close your eyes and once again become the High Priestess. Are you someone who is in touch with your intuition, your unconscious beliefs, your spirituality? How discreet and tactful are you? Do you reveal yourself to people, or do you keep things hidden? Imagine, even if you're not a particularly secretive person, that you have secrets and that it might be not the right time to reveal it. What decisions would make you reveal your knowledge and what wouldn't? And then open your eyes and see if, again, the understanding of the card has revealed itself to you. This is very much about obscure knowledge, about hidden mystery within yourself. And maybe this card is telling you to get in touch with that secretive side to yourself, or maybe to just hold things back. If it represents someone else in a spread, it might mean that you're coming into contact with a very spiritual person, or somebody who is not quite so open and has a lot of depth to them. But you decide. Let's pick another card. Let's go to the Empress now. Have a good look again at the card. Look at all the abundance of nature in this card. It doesn't matter what deck you have, you're bound to have some connection with nature and abundance in some way. Sometimes the Empress is shown pregnant. Often she's shown in fields of corn with trees and growing things around her. She's very much the embodiment of nature. So have a good look, dwell on that card and all the colours and the imagery, and then close your eyes, and as we've done before, go into it and visualise yourself being aware and immersed in all that abundance, all that fruitfulness, and see how that feels to you. And then open your eyes and connect with your understanding of the card. Did you feel an urge to be nurturing and loving towards others, or to yourself? Is it you that needs the nurturing? Do you need to get in touch with the cyclical seasons, so maybe having a little bit more patience and allowing things to develop when the time is right? Do you feel that there are new things growing in your life? Maybe that's what it means, but see how it feels to you. And let's move on to the next card, the Emperor. Put the card in front of you. Let's have a look at him sitting on his throne, feeling in charge, responsibility, authority. This is very much masculine structure, patriarchal authority. And this may or may not sit well with you, but dwell on the card, dwell on the colours and the imagery, and then close your eyes and go into it. How much of the imagery is standing out in your mind? Imagine yourself sitting on the throne. How wise a ruler would you be? How would you make your decisions any differently to the way you do now? Would it make you think more carefully, or would it make you decide more quickly? And then open your eyes and see how well you resonate with this card now. This card represents Aries, so there's a lot of fire, a lot of energy, a lot of dynamism in this card, even though he's sitting still on a throne. So there's a lot of often red colours and orange colours in it. But, can this be saying to you that you need to be more in control? It's definitely not like the High Priestess, which was very much more about getting in touch with your unconscious. This is very much about being in control and being aware of your control. But be aware also that it might mean that perhaps you're too much in control. What do you think it means in relevance to the question that you're asking? When it comes up in a reading, it could very well be that you're coming into touch with someone like that. Or if it stands for you yourself, maybe you need to think about your authority, your responsibility. How welcome are your responsibilities and how well are you dealing with them? But get in touch with the cards first. Learn to feel how they feel with you. How is your personal impression of authority? Do you accept responsibility and authority well? Because that will have an impact on your readings too. This is where the tarot can be so useful for self-development. It makes you question how you deal with these things in your own life. So how well do you deal with responsibility and authority? Let's move on to the Hierophant. Have a good look at the Hierophant. Have a good look at the card, at what he's wearing, at the way he's sitting, where he is sitting, and the position of the people, if there are any in front of him. Have a good look. Really feel, really immerse yourself in that card. Really feel as if you've captured all the imagery, and then close your eyes and imagine you're the Hierophant. Clearly this is a religious structure, definitely a moral code of some kind. How well do you connect with things like this? This is often quite a difficult card for people to engage with, because if you've had a bad experience with religious or hierarchical structure, it can not sit very well with you. On the other hand, if you value religion, it can be something you're very drawn to. So decide how this feels for you, how comfortable you feel for it. And be aware of that yourself, because it's important to be aware of your own understanding. And then when you open your eyes, have another look at the card and see if this card has lent any insight into your understanding of it. Clearly it represents religious structure, but it can also represent somebody that's coming into your life who's a teacher, maybe an older relative perhaps who's dispensing some wisdom. And of course it can be a person that's entrenched in their ways and a little inflexible. Often this card does have that sort of feeling of inflexibility about it, but also they're striving to create an order out of the chaos that is our world. So sometimes that order is necessary. People do need a moral structure sometimes to guide them along. So it has its place with everything else in the tarot. Let's go to the next card, the Lovers. Have a good look at this card. There's often an angel above two people. So have a good look at the imagery in this and just draw it all in and close your eyes and be in that picture. You can choose to be one of the lovers, or you can just choose to be the angel perhaps, or just choose to be in the moment in that image and see how that feels. And then when you open your eyes, see if you've gained any insight. Clearly with the Lovers, this is not just about two people being together. It's about finding something that you need inside yourself, so it can be falling in love not just with a person, but with maybe a thing like a career or a life path. And it's very much about choices. And often people say love changes everything, and when you do fall in love with your child, your partner, your career, it does change the way you see everything. So it often makes us make choices or faces us with difficult choices, particularly with people who fall in love with partners from a different background. So it involves a change in religious attitude, or it will force changes in their life and challenges they have to confront, because once you connect with something on a very soul level, it throws everything up into question. So this card is very much about the choices that come when we fall in love with life itself. Let's go to the next card, the Chariot. Have a good look at the card, have a look at the person. Is he in control of the two horses or creatures that are driving the chariot? Or are they driving him? Is the chariot stationary or is it moving? What do you think? Put yourself in the position of the chariot, close your eyes, and visualize how it feels. Are you moving forward or are you stuck? Are you inflexible? Are you the one that's in charge of the chariot? Or are the two creatures pulling you in opposite directions? Really experience how that card feels. Try and connect with it on a very inner level. And then open your eyes and see if that's given you any insight into the card. By all means, in this particular workshop, we're not taking very long to look at the cards, but take time yourself. Stop the CD at this point and really let yourself meditate or dwell on the card as long as you like, and then flick the switch on again and listen again afterwards. But when you're looking at the card afterwards, how did you feel? Did you feel that you actually had control over different elements in your life? I mean, often this card can represent somebody who's got various different streams, maybe juggling children and a career, or two different jobs, or maybe people who have different opinions and you're the one that's holding it all together. There's a lot of strength in this card, and although sometimes it can mean that there has been a struggle over opposing forces, there is a lot of success over it with sheer will and determination and motivation. But what do you think? Let's pick another card. Let's go to Strength. Have a good look at this card. It's an unusual card because you actually have a woman that actually looks like she's being very gentle with a creature of ferociousness, the lion. You would never think of opening a lion's mouth with gentle hands, but here you are, you have this mixture of opposites in this card, so really dwell on this card. Maybe you know what the symbol above her head means, maybe you don't, but it is the same symbol as the magician had. And maybe another time you can dwell on that. But at this moment, just look at the card, really draw it all in, all the colours, all the imagery, and then close your eyes and become that card, become the maiden in the card, holding open the lion's mouth. Are you having to be forceful, or are you doing it with a gentleness? How do you feel? Are you scared of the animal? Are you in control? How does the animal relate to you? And then open your eyes and let's have a look at the card, see if you've gained any insight into it. This card is very much about strength, but not in a very forceful way, the kind of strength that comes from patience, from hanging on in there, from knowing that it will be okay, from fortitude, really sort of a loving, caring kind of strength. The maiden is clearly unafraid and she's gently encouraging the lion to open his mouth. So it's very much about, you can not only control the situation, but you can control yourself as well. You can have all that strength, but if you have the patience to persevere, you can succeed. Let's pick the next card. This card is the Hermit. Have a good look at the card, have a good look at the person, look at what he's holding in his hand, look at where he is. Is it day or night? Does the place that he is look welcoming? Does he look happy, sad? Have a good look, really dwell on it. And then close your eyes and go into the card and become the Hermit. How do you feel? Do you feel lonely, abandoned, isolated? Or do you feel you've got everything that you need at this moment? You have your hood up, you have your cloak about you, but you have a lantern. Is that lantern guiding you, or does it represent something within yourself? Does the cloak hide yourself away from people or the elements, outside circumstances? Do you feel comforted by withdrawing within? And then open your eyes and have a look at the Hermit and see if you've gained any insight into the wisdom of this card. The Hermit clearly represents a time of going inwards, a time for introspection, a time to stop what you're doing. This is not a time for action, not about going out there and controlling the opposing forces like the Chariot, or being dynamic like the Emperor or the Magician. This is very much about withdrawing. You need to take time out for yourself. It's not about socializing. This is about peace and solitude, but it's very much inner peace. It's a time to really be aware that the light of the lantern is the light that is within you, and that you have got within yourself all the wisdom that you need. In a reading, it might represent someone that's coming into your life that has those qualities, or it might represent a need to develop those qualities. It might even, in a position of challenge, represent a person turning away from looking within and looking outward for the answers, when in fact they need to look inwards. Without looking inwards, going without for the answer will never get a person anywhere. You need to look within before you go without. Let's pick our next card. This is the Wheel of Fortune. This is often a very complex card because it's very rich in symbolism. And you would do well to look up all the symbolism and have a read about what they all mean, because all the reading does enhance our understanding of the symbolism as time goes on. But right now we're just going to connect to it with our intuition. So have a good look at the card, really dwell on it, and then close your eyes and immerse yourself in the world of the Wheel of Fortune. Whether you remember what the figures around the wheel were or not, just be aware of things moving around the wheel. Place yourself at the centre. Does it feel any different to if you placed yourself at the edge of the wheel? Just spend time immersing yourself in this card. And then when you're ready, open your eyes and have a look at it and see how you feel about it. It definitely, a wheel represents movement, so there's definitely a change in circumstances. And often the wheel can represent where you were once in one position. Things are now changing and you will now be in a different, but it does represent new opportunities, a change in fortune, a change in luck. So wherever this card comes up, it's definitely a motivation for change. The astrological significances of all the cards are also something that are well worth looking into. For example, the astrological significance of the Wheel of Fortune is Jupiter, and Jupiter is very much about abundance and good fortune. So the indications are that the changes that are going to be taking place are going to be good opportunities and new opportunities for advancement. A stroke of luck, you could say. Let's pick the next card, Justice. Let's have a good look at it, dwell into it. And then visualize yourself being Justice, sitting on that throne and holding the balance as well as the sword. And feel how that would feel to you. Would it make you change the decisions that you make? How well are you able to face up to the cold, hard light of the facts of the case? And then come out of the card, come out of your mind, and look at the card again and see if it resonates anymore. This is a card that's very much about the consequences of our actions. We can't get away from the consequences of our actions. If we eat something that's very bad for us, it may very well upset us, and if we do something that's wrong, there are karmic consequences. So this is very much about the consequences of our actions. And being blunt, the truth is very blunt. It just is. You can flower it and cloud it with your language and try and justify things your way, but in the end, at the end of the day, it is all about the truth of the matter. And very often in a tarot reading, you are faced with having to be very blunt to yourself and to the querent, perhaps a little bit more discreetly, but certainly about facing the truth of the situation. There's a sense of responsibility and fairness about this card as well. So it's about having things in balance. And whatever the outcome will be, it will be a fair outcome. It's worth bearing in mind that this card is not about punishment. So, consequences are not necessarily punishment. Everything in life has consequences. It can be an uncomfortable card to read. It certainly means that you have to do what's necessary. You have to face whatever the truth is, face the consequences, and deal with them. Let's look at the next card, the Hanged Man. A most unusual card containing a lot of symbolism that can be found in ancient mythologies. But have a good look at the card, the position particularly of the Hanged Man, and then close your eyes and imagine that you too are hanging from your foot, upside down. Do you feel restrained? Or does it feel liberating? And then come out of the card and have a look at it and see if you've gained any insight into this card. Clearly everything is upside down, everything is different, so there's a complete change in perspective. And although the person is bound by his foot, nothing else appears to be bound, and the smile on the hanged man's face, the implication that the person is enlightened, suggests that by changing our perspective, by letting go, by seeing things in a different way, we can become illuminated, we can receive enlightenment. It's about letting go of opinions, thoughts, beliefs that you have, a time of rest, reflection, a suspension of the moment to allow the answers to come to you from your insight and your intuition. It is definitely representing deep insight. Sometimes in order to gain understanding, we have to give something up, something has to go. So it's about opening yourself up to other perspectives, other solutions, other ideas, and however the insight is, whether it's a spiritual or an ordinary insight, it's certain that the hangman represents a change in your life. Things will never be quite the same again. Let's go on to the next card. Death. Death is often the card that disturbs most people that don't know the tarot or aren't aware of the significance. It can be a little frightening to see in a spread for people who are unused to seeing the tarot card. So sit down, have a good dwell at it, have a good look at the symbolism within it, look at the people around death, look at the background, look at the flag, look at what death is wearing, how he is seated, and really draw all that imagery in, and then close your eyes and be in that card. You can choose to be death itself and see how that makes you feel. This is a very significant card for meditation and can actually lead to really great insight if you spend time. But you could also choose to be one of the other people contained within the card and change and be a different person within the card and see if you can understand what that means to each of the individuals that are in the card. So have a good feel around that card in your mind and then come back and look at the card again with hopefully new insight. Death does represent change. However you look at it, it represents endings and beginnings. And yes, sometimes it does mean an actual death. It's rare that that actually means the person is going to die, or it means an actual death of the physical life. It is much more likely to mean the ending and beginning of a phase in a person's life, a transition, a transformation. And how you approach death is very much how you approach change. So, I mean, if you look at the card, you'll see that a king is flawed by it because his authority is only in the physical world. So he has lost all his authority and is completely on the ground. A priest will perhaps supplicate death and ask for mercy. The young maiden who is just beginning to explore life doesn't quite want to embrace death, but the child who has no fear and no understanding of mortality embraces and opens its arms towards death. And death is often masked or covered because it is an unseen thing, and that is often what causes the fear. So it's very much about transformation, change, endings and new beginnings, and how people face this card tells you an awful lot about how they feel about change. But sometimes in order for something to begin, you have to say goodbye to something else. So although this may represent a change and that something has to go, it should represent a new beginning as well. Let's pick another card. Let's look at Temperance. Temperance shows an angel or a figure blending two cups with a liquid. Immerse yourself in that card, have a good look at the imagery, the scenery, what the image is showing you, and then close your eyes and dwell on the image. Be that image. What are you actually doing? What are you trying to achieve? Is this something of a struggle for you, or is this something that is easy for you? And then open your eyes and look at the card again. Does this represent something that you are struggling to do? So is this a balance of opposites that you are trying to achieve and struggling with? Or does this represent a time where you are actually achieving a harmony by moving energies together? It's often called an alchemical card, and that represents the merging of two completely different liquids or metals to form something new. So very often, if you have a situation in your life, a challenge perhaps, turning it round into something positive is an alchemical transformation. So perhaps it can represent that something in your life has come towards you and you are changing what could at first appear to be a challenging circumstance to your benefit. That's an alchemical change. Maybe you have two particular camps in your life, choices, people, or two things pulling at you, and you are the one that is acting as the intermediary. Interestingly, in this card, there's often a rainbow or two mountains. There is clearly the image of two things coming together. Are you the one that is pulling them apart, or are you the one that's bringing them together? What do you think? You decide. What do you feel about this card when it comes up in a spread, or when it comes up for you? Maybe it's telling you that you need to be more harmonious with your life and be more in balance. Let's move on to the Devil. Have a good look at this card. It's often a disturbing card, often something that can be quite frightening to other people, but have a good look at it. How do you feel about it? Have a good look at the other people in the card. Where are they? What are they doing? Is this a card that looks frightening, happy, sad, trapped, vulnerable? Is it a harmonious card? Does it have energy, or is it static? Night, day, seasons, have a good look at everything. And then close your eyes and be in that card. How does that card make you feel? Is it oppressive? And then come out of that card and have a look at it again. This is clearly a card where the people that are chained below the Devil itself could easily slip the chains off. You can see that the chains around their neck, they could slip off, but they choose not to. And very often this is shown in a variety of different ways in other decks, but it is a very oppressive card. It's very much about being trapped, but we are the ones that go into this situation willingly. And it can often represent a variety of different things where people have gone into a marriage, a relationship, a job, maybe a house or a flat or something, some situation where they've ended up feeling trapped, that there is no hope, there is no way out, and they are feeling a need of suffering and oppression, and they can't move or feel free from it. And some people actually can live in this card for years and be almost martyred to their feelings of hopelessness and trapped. And it's important when this card comes up in a spread to be very, very aware that this is a choice that they have made, that you have made, and therefore there is no victim in it. The victim is only in your own mind, so that if you've gone into a situation willingly, you need to decide what is keeping you there and then feel very strong about the reason that's keeping you there, that it's a choice you're making rather than something that's trapping you. And if you do feel that it's a situation that you need to get out of for your own well-being and betterment, then obviously that's highlighting a situation that needs to change. But the feeling of hopelessness really is something that is flagged up with this card in order to advise yourself or people that you can change if you want to. So it's about knowing that these chains are ones that are forged yourself and that you alone can get out of them. So if you're the one that's perhaps gone to excess, maybe has too many partners or drinks too much or eats too much, or has gone into a situation that is clearly making you feel overwhelmed, you yourself can get out of it. It's your choice. The next card is the Tower, and this too can be quite challenging for some people. They get quite alarmed when they see it. Have a good look at it. Have a look at the Tower. Have a look at the people in the card. Have a look at the lightning. Have a look at everything around it. And then close your eyes and go into the Tower. Feel what is happening to you as the Tower. Feel how uncomfortable or comfortable this makes you feel. Are you desperate for change and this change is coming like a welcome breeze? Or are you devastated by it? How solid are your structures? And then open your eyes and have another look at the card. This card really represents sudden change. It can be a change in just nothing more than your thinking, a pattern of belief. It can be a revelation or an understanding about you, your life, your work, people around you. But that understanding changes everything. It changes your perspective. Sometimes if we build a structure around us, either in our home or our work or in our patterns of belief, we can get quite rigid, and sometimes it needs something quite shocking to shake us out of it. Often this can come in a breakdown or a change of circumstance, for good or bad, and can be quite challenging at the time. But often when this card comes up in a spread, it represents that there is a need for change. So it's worth looking at that as an opportunity rather than something that's quite devastating, an opportunity to reevaluate your life and bring new things in that perhaps you weren't allowing before. Whatever your instinct tells you about what exactly this card relates to in your particular life or in the person that you're reading for, it's clear it's going to make some changes. Let's take the next card, the Star. This is a welcome card after the Tower and the Devil and Death, but many people love this card. It's a beautiful image. Have a good look at it. Look at the surroundings, look at what the person in the card is doing, and then close your eyes and go into that card and become that person and feel what you are doing. There is the image of a person pouring water out of 2 jugs, so there's very much a giving sensation into this. How does that feel for you? Do you have an inexhaustible supply? And what exactly is it that you are dispensing? And then come out of the card, have a look at it again. This is very much a card about hope and peace. It doesn't necessarily represent something happening straight away, because there's a gentleness about this card that means time is being taken for this to develop. But very much a card about hope, about peace, about healing, and about nourishment being offered to you at a time possibly when you need it most. This card is very much about giving and receiving, so it may be questioning you as to how much you are giving to others, or whether you are receiving enough nurturing yourself. So question that, and question, if you're doing it for a reading, whether that person needs nurturing, needs hope, or whether they are the ones that need to dispense it to others. The astrological sign for this is Aquarius, and that's very much about the future, about looking at the bigger picture. And with all the stars in the sky, this is very much about connecting with cosmic consciousness, about things that relate to the greater things in life rather than the more personal, mundane, material things that we've come through with the Tower and the Devil and Death. This is much more rising above all that to a greater connection. Let's look at the next card, the Moon. This is often quite a disturbing card. It can be very evocative. People can be drawn to it or repelled by it. Have a good look at it. Look at the imagery. There's often water in this card, creatures. Look at where they are within the card. There's the implication of a journey, as there's a path that lies ahead, lit up by the light of the moon. Maybe your own feelings towards moonlight and moon energy itself may be evoked by this card, but have a good look at it, draw in all the colouring, all the symbolism, and then close your eyes and be in that card, be in that landscape. Feel the light of the moon upon you. How does that make you feel? Are you one of the creatures? Do you feel you are distracted by the light of the moon, or that the moon is helping you? Really connect with that card, and then when you open your eyes and you have another look at it, question how well this moonlight is guiding you, because this card can represent two completely different things. It can be, the ability to connect with your psychic or subconscious self and that deep intuition that we are trying to connect with today. But it can also represent how easily it is to be deluded. This can be a very self-deceptive card. So as well as connecting with your intuition, you do need to be aware that you're not running away with yourself, that you're not deliberately trying to imagine things. And often when this comes up in a spread, it can represent a person who would like something to be a certain way, or is being deceived by people, or maybe is even deceiving themselves. But it can also mean connecting with the greater subconscious. So it can be a time where there can be great creativity and insight, and above all, it's a time of trust in your intuition. Be aware at this time of any dreams that you might have as well. because your dream world can be very significant, particularly any messages that you may get into your dreams. So for you or for the person you're reading for, do be aware of any dreams. Perhaps ask them if they're having any significant dreams at the moment, and if it's for you, be aware of your dreams. Let's go to the next card, the Sun, the opposite to the Moon. Have a look at this card. This is usually quite an easy and joyful experience for most people. It's a very happy card. Feel all the warmth from that lovely sun. Really go into it with the colours. Look at the child, look at the creature, look at the flowers, look at the background, and then put yourself in that picture anywhere you like and experience the warmth of a sunny day. And then when you open your eyes, have a good look and think about what that might feel to you as an answer to a question that you might ask, or in a reading. It certainly represents all the things that are very obvious, such as joy and happiness, a sense of well-being. There's also health, great health, a healthy outlook maybe, not just necessarily a physical health, and also good luck, maybe something that is going your way now. Maybe this is just a moment where everything is coming together and everything is going to be all right. If a person or you yourself have come through a difficult time, this would represent the light on the horizon. And it's also about sharing that happiness. Often when the heart is open and there's that sense of happiness and love, it's automatically shared. It opens up our hearts to all sorts of other opportunities. So if it comes up as advice, maybe it's suggesting that you are like the child on the horse and you open your arms to all experiences with a childlike enthusiasm and embrace all that life has to offer and make the most of the moment and be happy. Let's go to the next card, Judgment. Have a good look at the imagery. See all the people within it, where they are, what they're doing, the greater figure in the sky, the angelic figure in the trumpet, and then close your eyes and go into that landscape. Either you're the angel or maybe you're the people underneath. And how does that feel to you? What do you think is happening in this card? So put aside anything you've read and really feel your connection to this card. Do you think this is an ending, a beginning? Is the card itself is called Judgment. Do you think this is a card where someone or something is sitting in judgment? Does that feel comfortable to you? And then come out of the card and open your eyes and have a look at the card again. This card does represent a new beginning, but it does also represent a new beginning coming from dealing with the consequences of the past. So it's very much about letting go of the past. You can see the people there that are rising out of their coffins, so it represents a time where you have been locked into patterns of behavior, or thoughts have dragged you back, or something that's happened, consequences of something that has happened in your past have held you back. And the trumpet call is an awakening to a new life and a new beginning. Sometimes when it's read, it can mean decisions that need to be made that can be quite difficult to deal with. And maybe this is a hard time for you to make the decisions that you have to make. And let go of the past, the bad habits, the relationships, anything that we've held on to that we really need to let go of. Just let them all go, heal yourself and move on for a new beginning. And let's go on to the last card in the Major Arcana, the World. Have a good look at the figure, what's around the figure, the images around the figure. Draw it all in, look at the colour, and then close your eyes and become that figure. Do you feel liberated? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you uncomfortable? Does this represent travel of an inner nature or an outer nature? Do you feel connected or disconnected? Ask yourself all these things, and then when you've dwelt on the card for a time, open your eyes and let's have a look at the world. It really contains everything that we've looked at. It represents a completion of a whole cycle. It's an opportunity to connect with all sorts of opportunities that are opening up to you right now. And there's a sense of completion because we started off with 0, with the Fool, which was a beginning and a leap of faith, and that leap into the unknown. And the world has travelled through all these different aspects within the Major Arcana and has ended up here with complete understanding and ability. She's got wands in both hands, so she has got the power, she's got the understanding, she's got the ability to take advantage of anything that comes her way. She's often known as the world dancer. There's a sense of exhilaration and liberation there. And the fact that she's in a circle that represents rebirth and conclusion is very much about a new beginning and an opportunity around you. You've got the 4 elements around the world, so that shows that there are all sorts of possibilities. So this is a whole card that represents completion, perfection, and happiness. Enjoy it. So now we've gone through all the major arcana cards and you've really got to know them a little bit more and you feel a little bit more familiar with them. Let's try and see how we could work with them and do a few readings. A basic beginning to understanding readings is a daily reading. So you just shuffle the cards and draw a card to discover what you need to be aware of today. So why don't you start that? Shuffle the cards and just pick a card for today. And you can do this every day for the rest of the week and next week and see how you get on. So for example, if you draw a card and you get something like the High Priestess, perhaps the card might be telling you that you need to be a little discreet today. You need to be on your guard about not revealing too much. Maybe a situation will arise where someone will be asking you to reveal a little more than you're comfortable about revealing or should reveal. So be aware of what is also lying behind what people are saying to you. Maybe people aren't saying everything that they should, and maybe not to take things at face value and look beyond what people are saying to what they're really meaning. And then check at the end of the day how relevant the message you gave was to your experience of the day, and spend a few moments seeing if there was anything else you might have considered when you pick that card in the morning that could have been significant. I know it's a pain, but if you can write down any notes on this, it's really, really invaluable to your understanding of cards, your understanding, your particular understanding, your intuition of the cards, which is also interesting to note will change as you progress. So you can look back at those notes maybe a year or so later and see how your understanding has developed. And believe me, it's terribly encouraging to do that. Another example is maybe you draw the sun and it might be telling you to be positive and spread a little good cheer to people you come into contact with during the day. What about if you pick a card that may be a little troubling and you think to yourself, ooh, don't like that, what's going to happen to me today? So say, for example, you get the Tower for your daily card. Don't go into a panic, don't be alarmed. What it might just be saying is that it's offering up a challenge to your pattern of thinking. Maybe somebody's going to say something that you need to consider instead of just turning around and saying, no, that's not possible. Maybe consider thinking of a person's idea as a possibility. It may mean that you have to rethink your structure, you have to rethink the way you do things, but the Tower can mean that as well. It doesn't always have to be so dramatic. And doing these cards on a daily basis, because not something dramatic happens to us every day, it will give you a greater range of understanding as to how many situations these cards can relate to. Of course, it may well be that you come across a situation that requires you to make a decision, such as leaving your job or something equally significant, but that's up to you to decide. How significant do you think it will be for your day? What is your instinct telling you? So write it down and have a look at it at the end of the day. Eventually, when you go on to reading for others, another thing that often crops up, something you may consider insignificant, another will consider highly challenging. So say, for example, your senses tell you that this card that you've just drawn for this other person represents a move of house. And for you, that may not be very insignificant, but for them, it might represent something very significant and very challenging. So be aware that your own particular impressions of things or ideas about things may not be the same as anybody else's. Now let's try something a little different. Say pick a card for a specific reason. What about a question you want to ask the tarot today? It could be a life significant question like, what is my soul purpose? How can I fulfill my life potential? Those are very heavy questions, and one card alone will give you a wealth of answers, but maybe it will only relate to what is important to you today to know about your soul purpose. So bear that in mind as well. But it could be questions for the moment like, what lesson do I need to learn today? What kind of impression should I try to put on the new company that I'm going for an interview? Should I appear confident or should I appear distant and discreet? How should I react? The tarot can be very enlightening and give you a lot of insights into how to behave in situations that we may not be very confident about. and also what you need to learn from challenges facing you at the moment. We all have them, that's life. And how we get through these challenges, the tarot can be very helpful. Don't forget to trust your instincts and follow what the tarot is teaching you. What you may understand this week can change next week as your understanding develops and grows, and the more you trust your intuition, the more it will speak to you. It's like a door. Once you open it a little bit and you let things come through, the door will open more and more, and eventually you'll find you have a very strong connection to your intuition. Why not try a simple 3-card spread, still using the major arcana? These are often 3 cards in a usual 3-card spread that would represent the past, the present and the future, but you could try 3 cards for any situation you're in. So say for example you're going for an interview for a job and you want advice, choose 3 cards to represent how you could best present yourself, what will be the challenge you most need to be aware of, and what might be the likely outcome. The real skill in reading the tarot in spreads is how to ask the right question in order to receive the answer you most need at this time. So think carefully how to word the question. What do you really need to know before you actually ask the question and draw the cards? So going back to the interview for the job, for example, do you need to know whether it's the right job for you? Do you need to know what kind of impact it will have on your current life? Do you want to know if you'll be able to carry out the work? I mean, you might be aiming too high with this job. What do you really need to know about this next move that you're making? If you're moving house, what are the neighbours going to be like? How well are your children going to fit into the new environment? All sorts of questions can come up. Think carefully about your questions before you ask them. And when you have challenges in your life, a really great little spread for that, 3-card spread, is identifying the challenge. What is the real problem? Because it's often not what it appears to us straight away. And it can often throw great insight into what our real fears are about the problem in front of us. So ask what the challenge is. Identify the challenge. And then the next card is, what is the way through? What advice can you give me on how to get me through this particular problem or challenge? And then the 3rd card, what is the gift this challenge has for you? Because it's absolutely true that every challenge does have a gift, even if you can't see it at the time. But you can see it much, much later. And this can often give you a great amount of hope, because if you're learning something, it makes every challenge valuable and becomes steps of learning on the way rather than a series of catastrophes or mistakes that we all make. If you learn from your mistakes or your challenges, you're learning. It's a path forward. So let's imagine a scenario where we have a challenge in front of us, and we're going to ask what the challenge is. Identify what the challenge really is all about. It won't tell you that this is a challenge that you haven't paid your bills or that you have just met somebody that is giving you difficulty in your life. What it will say is what the challenge is within you. It's how you're responding to the circumstances that is the real challenge, not the circumstances that are affecting you. So let's have a look. Let's imagine a challenge in our lives, and I'm just going to draw 3 cards out of the major arcana and see what we come up with. So the first one is justice. What is the challenge? What would that mean if we were looking at our challenge and justice came up? Well, it might mean that the challenge is you've got to distance yourself from emotions, look at the hard facts of the case, and this is what you're having difficulty doing, and that you've got to make a very clear decision about where you're going, looking at the facts of the case as if you were in a court of law. Look at the pros, look at the cons, look at the positives, look at the negatives, make a clear decision, distance yourself from what you want, and just look at what has to be done. So that's the challenge. That can be quite challenging if it's an emotional situation. And then what is the way through? It will tell you how you can achieve that, because when somebody gives you advice on something, that's one thing, but actually achieving it, getting through that advice, putting it into practice is a whole other thing. So let's ask for some advice on what is the way through. I'm picking a card here, and I've got the Hanged Man. So what that is telling me is that the way through will be to change my perspective, change my way of thinking, to let go of the rigid behavior that I have, or the rigid pattern of thinking, or thinking that the outcome has to be in a certain way. Be open to other possibilities, a different way of thinking or acting in order to allow this outcome to be resolved. And then, what is the gift this challenge has for you? And the card I've got is the Sun. How cool is that? A really happy, beneficial, healthy, well-being outcome where everybody is happy. That's how you relate the cards to the spreads in your life. Another way you can have a look at the cards and get to know them is by looking at them and putting them next to perhaps different people that you know. Look at the major arcana. Do you know anybody who is hermit? Do you know anybody who is strength? Do you know someone who represents the high priestess to you? See if you can relate the cards to people in your life or even circumstances or times. And another thing you can do is bring out the major arcana, put them down, and pick cards to represent major events that happened in your life. What about the period of life when you were a child? What card most represents what your childhood was like, what your teenage years was like? What about that real major life change you had? Was that a Tower moment or a Hanged Man moment? Try and identify the cards to episodes in your life, people in your life, and maybe going beyond that to people in different kinds of jobs. So who would you see a judge? Would you see the judge as justice, or would you see them as the emperor, or maybe even the Hierophant? Do you see your teacher as somebody who is the Chariot, or do you see them someone as the Wheel of Fortune? Do you see your doctor as Temperance, or do you see them as Death, representing a change in your health, or Sun making you well again, or even High Priestess having access to information that you're unaware of? How do you see your doctor, your teacher, your lawyer? Whatever you see, what is your perspective? Learn to relate with the tarot yourself. There are endless games that you can play. Have fun with it. Don't be afraid with it. Get familiar with it and get to know it. So explore the tarot. The symbolism contained within it is centuries old, containing the wisdom of the ancients. And now here we are adding our own modern wisdom, and now here you are adding yours. See how easy it is to connect with such an incredible learning tool. You'll be surprised how amazing it can be. Other things you can do with the major arcana are pick a card that you like, explore why you like it, why it makes you feel good. Write down a list of keywords that spring to mind when you're looking at it, that explain how you feel about it. And do the same with a card that you dislike. Try and write down why you dislike it, why it makes you feel uneasy or uncomfortable, and then revisit that in a couple of months and see if your perspective has changed. Maybe this is going to be a lifelong love or dislike with a card. Maybe it will change as you go on. Pick a card that represents happiness, sorrow, challenge, hardship, effort, family love, greed, pride, control, all those kind of human emotions and feelings, and see if you can find a card that relates to it all. Tell a story with the tarot. So start with the Fool and imagine you are the Fool going through the tarot, and next you're encountering the Magician. What is the Magician telling the Fool? And then you meet the High Priestess. What is the High Priestess telling the Fool? And say it out loud as if you're telling yourself a story. And if you can find someone that you can practice on, all the better. Let them be your guinea pig if you like, and pick a card for them and see if your interpretation means anything to them. That's really, really useful feedback. So get a friend that you can trust that isn't going to be judgmental, may have a good laugh with her, but not necessarily laugh at you, but will appreciate what you're trying to do. And then pick a card, let her pick a card and interpret it for her, and then ask for her feedback at the end of the week and see what she felt. It's your first start about saying what you think about the cards. It gets over that barrier about looking at the card and feeling what you think about it and then saying it out loud. That's a bit of a barrier for some people, so get used to saying it out loud. Looking at how we can connect with our intuition with the minor arcana. You'd be surprised how many people struggle with the minor cards, often especially with the court cards, but we're going to get stuck in straight away and get to grips with them. Whatever deck you're using, and I'm using the Rider-Waite, sort them out first of all into suits, and then let's begin with the swords. So lay out all the swords in front of you, going from the Ace to 10, and then have the Page, Knight, Queen and King, and let's just have a look at them. First of all, I just want you to have a good look at the whole lot together. What kind of image springs to mind? Do you find this whole suit something that resonates quite well with you? Does it feel comfortable? Do you feel them as a challenge? Swords often represent worry and decisions. Do you see them as very positive and empowering? Is it something that you do a lot of? Are you somebody who lives in your mind a lot? Or is this somebody that makes you think of other people? So have a good look at the whole suit and see how it resonates with you, and then let's go through them. So let's start with the ace. All the aces represent beginnings and opportunities, and with the swords that represent the intellect, it's the beginning of an idea. So it's a new idea that's just come into your mind, a new possibility, a new way of thinking. If you go on to number 2, you're looking at somebody who cannot make a decision. They've got 2 swords, so there's 2 paths they could go down, but they have a blindfold, so they cannot see. Behind them you have a sea and you have the moon. Now the sea and the moon, that kind of resonates a little bit with the High Priestess card that we did with the Major Arcana. And if you recall, that represented the unconscious, the intuition, the psychic ability. It also represents the sea and the moon that we connected with the moon card in the Major Arcana. So you've got all that imagery that represents the unconscious or subconscious within us. And what that card is saying, if you cannot see with your physical eye, you cannot make a decision about where to go, trust your instinct, trust your intuition, go within yourself to find what on an inner level is drawing you to the right path to make, and then trust it and go with that. With the Third of Swords, you've got heartbreak. This clearly is going to be a card that if that comes up in a spread and you're reading it for somebody else, it's highly likely you can look at the person with compassion because they're obviously going through a very, very challenging time. However, out of all the cards, possibly all the cards in the Minor Arcana, this card offers one of the greatest possibilities for transformation, because at that moment when you are heartbroken, when things have not worked out the way you wanted them to, when you really feel that the world has a little bit caved in on you, you can really be honest with yourself. You can look at what drew you to make those decisions, get into that situation, be with that person in the first place, and reevaluate what draws you down those kind of paths, and maybe make a decision to go for something that is more to your greater good and well-being. So it offers a great opportunity to transform. It's at moments like that that we can often turn our lives round and create a much better life for ourselves. So it's a very hopeful card, although at the time the person that you're reading for, and if it's yourself, will not recognize that. The Four of Swords represents a rest, a time to be still. It does actually look like a funeral or a chapel of rest, but that's very much what it is. It's about contemplating, going within. A time usually coming after great worry and stress. So after the third, where you've had a lot of heartbreak, there's a welcome rest from strife. Number 5 represents being defeated. You can see that somebody there is the victor. Often in a reading, it can be a little bit hard for beginners to determine whether the victor is the person you're reading for or the person that is doing it to you and you're coming out a little worse for wear. So that's where your instincts will have to come in, as to actually who the defeated is and who is the vanquisher in this particular situation. There is an element of dishonesty about this. You can see that the person is quite pleased that they've gained these swords and the other people look quite crestfallen, and there's an uncomfortableness about somebody gaining something and feeling good about gaining something at the expense of others. There's a lot of self-interest in the number 5. It often represents a time, all the 5s represent a little bit of instability and chaos, so this is definitely a time of change. Moving on to the 6s, this is about cooperation with others and going forward in another phase. With the 6 particularly of swords, this is moving on, recovery from a place that you've been in. If you look at the water, one side of the water is choppy, but the water where the person is heading is calm. But the person is taking the swords with them. So there's a sense that whatever they've been through, whatever difficult experience they've been through, they're taking the pain or the worry of that experience with them, but they are moving forward. So this is often a difficult time of transition, but would indicate that it's a time of moving on to calmer, more still waters. The 7 of Swords represents a lot of inner work that's going on in your mind, and in this person's mind they're clearly running away with something that may or may not belong to them. Do you think the swords in this particular image belong to other people and this person is taking them away, so actually taking something that doesn't belong to them, or are they taking something back that did belong to them? There's a lot of hidden innuendo in this card, and it's important to try and establish where this is being done to you or to the person you're reading for, or whether it's the person you're reading for or yourself that it applies to. That's where your instinct again will come in. With the Eight of Swords, you're talking about a difficulty here in moving forward. It's about unable to see where you're going. Obviously the person's blindfolded, they're bound, and there's swords all around them. They can't see a way forward. We've all experienced that moment where we cannot see a way forward and we don't know where to go, and this card represents quite clearly that moment. With the Nine of Swords, it's the nights where you wake up worried sick, and very often worried unnecessarily. The eider down that's over the person in bed represents astrological images, and there seems to be the impression here that the person is worrying unnecessarily. There's an awful lot of swords there, but they're not harming her, they're not facing her, they're just on the wall. So it's very much in the person's mind. With the Ten of Swords, in the person's mind. With the Ten of Swords, all the tens come to a completion of a cycle. It's a finality, an ending. And here we've got all the swords in the person's back, so often when this comes up in a spread, the person will feel overwhelmed and absolutely at the end of their tether. What do you feel from this? What is your impression? Do you see the sun in the background as a sunrise or a sunset? So do you see this as perhaps a new beginning on the horizon, or do you see this as the end of worry? It's very important, although I'm going through the cards here, for you to connect with your own inner feelings. The court cards represent individuals and often can be quite difficult to read. When they come up in a reading, they'll represent an aspect of yourself or someone you're coming into contact with. That's up to your intuition to decide whether it's one or the other. But if you look at the page going up to the king, pages represent people who are young, often can represent Aquarians' children, and the queen and king are often more mature individuals or can represent a more responsible side to yourself. So starting with the page, you've got a young, youthful energy, and with the swords we're talking about the intellect, so we're talking about the youthful truthfulness, a sense of justice and ideals that they are holding dear, a thoughtful person, perhaps fairly pensive but considerate, a very considerate, and there's a sense of innocence, the innocent truth that you have before you become experienced with the need to perhaps hold things back at times. With the Knight, there's a rashness, there's that sense of movement and charging forwards. So here, the person has grown a little and is very opinionated and can charge forward, perhaps sometimes being blunt, but can often be quite incisive and using the power of the logic and the mind to come direct to the heart of the situation, can often cut through problems and get right to the heart of the matter, but in doing so may often upset people through their opinions and their directness. With the Queen, you have a mature woman who is often independent. It used to often be called as the widow card, but now often represents an independent woman who is able to be articulate, is honest, is experienced, has a great intellect. I often see this as a card that represents someone like a female lawyer. But what about you? What do you think? Do you know anybody that reminds you of the Queen of Swords? Do you know anybody that reminds you of the Knight or the Page? Coming to the King, we have somebody who is analytical, intellectual, very clear about their thoughts and what they think, and able to articulate their thoughts. Often this can be an intransigent person who's so opinionated that they are not very flexible, but nevertheless somebody who is extremely clever. So all the swords represent things mostly to do with our minds, our intellect, different aspects of ways of thinking, from worry and heartbreak and not knowing where to go, to being able to get to the heart of a situation, being able to be blunt, being able to make decisions, being able to be articulate and communicate our ideas. Let's have a look at the wands now. So gather up all your wands and spread them out in front of you, from the Ace to the 10 and then the court cards at the bottom, and have a good look at them all. I mean, they're all very warm and colourful, very different colour to the swords, whereas you had the blue and the white for the swords representing the air and that quality of mind about it. This is all about action, this is about your desires, this is about your passion, your courage, your motivation, your willpower, in all its different forms. And if we go through from the ace, like we did with the swords, you've got that first desire to move, that initial creative spark, that beginning of a hobby, beginning of a practice, that confidence that you have to start something out, and that energy where all the leaves are sprouting on this wand. This is about new energy that's going in a new direction. So there's a lot of energy. All the wands are about energy. If you get too many of them, the person needs to take a bit of a rest. And if you get too little of them, it's about having energy, wanting to direct the energy, but perhaps not necessarily knowing where to go. So when you get to the Two of Wands, you're looking outward. You've got some establishment, you've gained some strength, but you're looking outward for more ways to explore your life potential. And the Third continues that. Again, you've got an established strength, but you're looking ahead. It's about leadership. You've got an established base from which to go to, from which to explore your life. Where do you go from here? And with the Four of Wands, you've got stability. Often it can represent value in your home life. It can even represent celebration of anything to do with the home, such as a homecoming or moving into a new home, sometimes even a marriage, building a new home. But it's all about that home structure and the celebration of it. With the Five, is that arguing or is that playing? What do you think? If you feel that that's playing, then take it from that. If you think it's fighting, then take it from that. Maybe it's fighting, but not with any degree of seriousness. But there's certainly a lot of going on. Maybe there are things going on with people that you know, or people at work, where people are saying things that could be construed as argumentative, but it's not actually got that far. So it's possibly heading into the realms of people being very lively in what they say and what they do. With Six, you've got victory, you've got success. You can clearly see a man on a horse with a laurel wreath. So is this success that he's established or he's going to get? That will depend on you to decide, and whereabouts it is in the spread that you're doing. With the Seven, you've got an established strength, but there's still ongoing problems, ongoing troubles. But the person is remaining defiant. So they're in a position of strength and they're standing their ground. So it's a good position to be in, but there's still a lot of problems yet to come. With the Eight, there's a sense of movement. So this could be travel, this could be news, but there's a real sense of movement and action going on in that particular card. In the Nine, it very much looks like somebody's come through the wars, that somebody's had a bit of a fight, gained their strength, and is taking a little bit of a breather there. And with the 10, it's about taking on too much. I've often seen this card come up in spreads with people who do an awful lot of work for others in one way or another and can't say no to helping other people out, but have actually ended up taking on too much. Or it can come up in the cards of people who work very hard and don't know when to say no to a job that's come on and are feeling the pressure of that. If there's too much of that emphasis and the cards around them indicate real trouble, that person really needs to take a break. Going to the court cards, we've got again the pages, the knights, the younger people, moving up to the more mature Queen and King of Wands. These are going to be individuals in your life who are fiery, who are energetic, who are dynamic, who are creative, who possibly work hard and play hard. They can represent aspects of you. Not everybody is just wands or just swords or just cups, but there'll be times when you are a Queen of Wands or a King of Wands, and other times when you may be more a King of Swords, or yet another time you may be a King of Pentacles. It depends. Maybe you're one thing at work and another thing at home, another thing with your friends and another thing in your hobbies. You may very well notice different aspects of these characters, these court cards within yourself. In fact, it's a really good exercise for you to pick up the court cards and put them all out, the wands, the cups, the swords and the pentacles, and see which ones you relate to for different situations. So pick a court card that resonates with you for what you're like at work, for what you're like with your parents, what you're like with your children, your partners and your friends. See how you differ and see how they all make up parts of a whole. So it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is purely and simply this, but will represent an aspect of that person that's either coming into your life or of you at the time. So if we're looking at the Page of Wands, we're looking about somebody who's creative and enthusiastic and confident and full of ideas and ready to get going and do things. And when we get to the Knight, we get somebody who's a little bit more of that energy. So imagine somebody who's confident and enthusiastic a little bit more, and it becomes hot-tempered and impulsive, possibly a bit rash. So they'll be the kind of people that will draw people to them, just as fire draws people to them for their warmth. It can easily burn occasionally, and impulsive people and creative people can often be the kind of people that can be the first to fly off the handle, if you like, and other people can get burnt. So there's a sense of impulsiveness and rashness about the Knight of Wands. Impulsiveness and rashness about the Knight of Wands. With the Queen of Wands, you've got a lot of nature imagery. You've got a cat, you've got flowers. So this is somebody who really connects with nature, a very sensual person, bit of a party animal. So somebody who's very energetic, self-assured, but fully immersed in the experience of life. And with the King of Wands, a creating, charismatic, inspirational person. Very often these people make great leaders and have great followers because of their dynamism, because of their energy. Everybody loves following people with great ideas and great energy, and they often make great leaders if they can temper that energy with the logic of the swords, the practicality of the pentacles, and the compassion and understanding of the cups. Let's look at the suit of cups now. Put them all out in front of you from 1 to 10, ace to 10, with the court cards at the bottom, and just have a good look at them like you have done with the other suits. Cups are all about emotions and feelings, so what do you recognize in the cards here? What do your instincts tell you about what each card means? Is there a card there that represents a time when you have experienced love? Maybe love of friends, love of a partner, love of children, love of parents, love of life, love of career. There are all different kinds of love, and what different aspects of love do you recognize within these cards that resonates with you? It's important you make that connection with each of the suits before dwelling on their actual traditional meaning, because what it will mean to you will always be something special and personal to you. With the Ace of Cups, it's the beginning of love or an emotional outlet or creativity in some ways. It's certainly a beginning, and it will have an emotional impact. With the Two of Cups, we often think it's like the lovers, but we think of the lovers as representing the love affair often. But the Two of Cups is probably much more of an indication of a real soul meeting, a real connection of individuals that have each other's well-being at heart. So there's this real sense of intimate connection with the Two of Cups. There's definitely a loving union and great intimacy with this particular card. With the Three of Cups, well, you can see it's a celebration. You can see they're having fun. You can see they're enjoying each other's company. This is a love of friendship. This is a love of social activity. Can often come up in spreads for you or for others at a time when you're enjoying your friendships and your social activities. The Four, well, you can see someone sitting under a tree. He's got cups, so he's got some kind of emotional well-being, something else on offer that he doesn't seem too interested in. So maybe there's a sense of like, well, there are other things on offer, but he's not too inclined to pick them up at the moment. So there's apathy and dissatisfaction. Can you recognize that in your life? Do you recall a time when you felt like that, where there have been things going on that maybe were on offer to you, but you just didn't feel like taking them up? If you go to 5, there's clearly someone who's upset over cups that have been spilt. There's that old saying about don't cry over spilt milk, but clearly this person is upset over things that have gone wrong, that have not worked out the way that they would have liked. There seems to be a dwelling on that, so there's a sense of regret, although you can see that there are still cups standing, so this person does have something emotionally of value in their lives that they should be looking at and valuing instead of dwelling on what has been spilled. With the 6, this is a card where are they children or are they adults? There's a sense of family well-being, and nostalgia maybe for things that used to be. Is this going back to a time when you were happy? Something in your childhood was happy? Or is this a present time for you? What does this card mean to you? With 7, we're presented with all sorts of images in cups. Maybe there's a lot of different things on offer here, and maybe some of the things that look enticing are not necessarily the things that will be the best for you, but often a lot of possible options out there for you, maybe even wishful thinking, maybe a desire for all those things to be on offer, and they're not real, they're just wish fulfillments. With 8, this is a card of transition and can often represent a very challenging time to an individual or yourself if it comes up in a spread. It can mean leaving behind something that you've really built up and put a lot of effort into, possibly an involvement with a job, a family life, or a partnership. Nonetheless, it's something you've invested a lot of time, effort, care, and possibly even your whole heart into. And for the right reasons, for all the best reasons, you have to let it go and move on. That's always difficult for any of us. And the fact that it happens at night with a moon represents that there's a moment here that perhaps it's not out in the open. It's having to move away on an inner level, not just on an outer level. So quite a challenging card, but often a card of transformation as well. With the 9, we've got somebody who's clearly quite happy with where they are, a bit of a fat cat. A lot of pleasure there, a lot of satisfaction, a lot of content with what they've got. So if that comes up in a spread, this represents a time in a person's life where they've got everything that they need. And with the 10, a really happy family. So there's just about everything in that card about shared pleasure within a family environment. If we move on to the court cards, again, we're looking from the page to the king, so we're looking from the younger person up to the more mature individual. You're looking at a young, emotional person who's intuitive, who's loving, who's caring. The page can often represent a new affair or a new love in your life, sometimes even pregnancy. But here, right now, we're looking at a young, emotional person who's very, very in tune with their inner selves. The knight is somebody who's very sensitive and romantic, but the fact that he's covered in armour can often mean that there are barriers up, so he can be a little bit on the defensive side and a little bit changeable and moody. With the queen, this is a woman who's clearly in touch with her psychic and intuitive ability, an emotional person, a sensitive person, maybe sometimes a little bit too sensitive and maybe sometimes a little introvert, but clearly in touch with her intuition and emotions. And the king too, a man who is in touch with his emotions, who can be caring, immensely compassionate to others, and very tolerant and understanding. Let's have a look at the pentacles now. So spread out all the pentacles in front of you, from the ace to the 10 with the court cards at the bottom, and have a good look at all of them and see what you can sense from them. You can clearly see most of it's about work, and certainly pentacles are about the material world, so they're about your physical, practical considerations, how you eat and how you work, how you earn money, where you get your money from, your practical considerations of paying bills, making plans, whether you move house, whether you have to watch your pennies, or whether you actually help others through your money, and your approach towards the practical considerations of life. One of the things that the pentacles can refer to are the astrological connotations, so you would have the earth signs of Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn. And Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn people are people who pay attention to detail, who work hard, where the material and physical considerations of life are valued and are important. Whereas with the cups, you would have had the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio and Pisces. You'd have had the dreamers, the intuitive people, people in touch with their emotions, their sensitivities and their psychic ability. With the air signs, you would have had Aquarius, Libra and Gemini. So this would have been about communication, thoughtfulness, looking at the bigger picture and balancing things up in your mind. And with the wands, you would have had the fire signs, so you would have had Sagittarius, Leo and Aries, all about people who are dynamic, energetic, impulsive, sometimes maybe rash, but certainly full of energy and a zest for life. But here we are back with the pentacles. And as again with the ace, you've got opportunity. So this could clearly mean an opportunity for work, prosperity, or a new job maybe, a new offer of a job. Whether a person takes it up or not will depend on what other cards you come. But if that comes up in a spread for you, it's possible a new work involvement that's coming up for you. The 2 represents juggling, Maybe two different kinds of job. Again, home and career, or job and your hobbies, but definitely, as the picture shows, a sense of juggling. The choppy waters at the back, does that mean that the person is handling it very well, or are they finding it a little bit difficult to juggle? The 3, there are people communicating. The 3s are often about communication. And there's a sense of working together and looking at plans. So you've got people coming from different perspectives there. You've got the architect with the plans, you've got a person who's drawn the plan, and you've got a monk who is actually going to make the decisions. So it's very much about people working together with their different perspectives to bring something to fruition. With the 4, the person's got pentacles above him, pentacles before him, and pentacles underneath him. So he's surrounded by money, if you like, but he's clearly keeping it all to himself. He's not getting it away. So this may well represent a time where you're having to watch your pennies, look after the money you spend, and maybe think about it a little bit more and be careful about what you do with your money. With the 5, do you think these people have been cast outside of the place that they are walking away from, or are they leaving by their choice? Ask yourself that question and tune into the card and dwell on it for some time and see what your impression and your understanding. It's important you resonate with the cards and make up your own mind. But this can often represent, whether it's by their own fault or not, people who feel left out, unwanted. There's a sense of not being terribly well there. Whether that applies to the meaning when you draw that card will be up to you. The 6 of Pentacles often represents the Good Samaritan card. It's certainly about having resources. Are you the person that's sharing your resources, or are you on the receiving end of resources? Do you need to think about the people that are helping you and be grateful and value them, or do you need to think about helping others less fortunate than yourself? With the 7 of Pentacles, a person's looking back at work that they've achieved with a sense of pride. Are they tired? Have they had enough? Have they decided that's enough, they're not going to do any more? Is it a harvest they're reaping, or is it just a break? With the 8, there's a lot of work going on, possibly even study or learning a new skill. But very much about paying attention to detail. As I said to you, Virgo and Taurus can often be earth signs that pay a lot of attention to detail, and this card does representing the skill of labour, where a lot of attention is paid on the smaller things. There's a sense of patience and diligence as well. It's taken a while for him to make all those pentacles. So there's a sense of like, this may take some time for you to complete, but it will be worth it in the long run. With the 9 of Pentacles, you've got established material possessions here. A woman who could be wealthy, who has everything that she needs, a woman of reputation perhaps, independence, mature, refined, clearly a woman who is well-to-do. Does that apply to you or to the person that you're reading for? Is this someone that's coming into your life? Again, you've got the grapes around to suggesting a harvest of some kind and a completion, coming near to the end of the cycle. So we're coming up to the 10 now, which is completion of a cycle. And you've got this happy family. Is there an old relative there that's looking a little bit left out? Or is he tired from the overwhelming sense of responsibility that having brought the family up has given him? Is there affluence and stability in this card, or a sense of taking it all for granted? If we move on to the court cards, again, these can be aspects of yourself or other people. So you've got the younger elements of the enthusiasm for hard work, a very practical person, somebody who will, here, let me do that for you, taking that chair out of your hands, lifting something up for you. So a very helpful person, very loyal, very dependable, very hardworking, very enthusiastic. With the Knight of Pentacles, there's a sense of beginning to get a little bit stubborn, a little bit pessimistic. They're realistic, they're logical, again, dependable and hardworking, but perhaps a little more caution. The horse isn't moving, there's armour all around him, so there's a sense of beginning to be a little bit intransigent. With the Queen of Pentacles, somebody who has a lot of common sense, who's very trustworthy, possibly a really great friend. Is this how you are to other people? Does this represent this particular time? You need to be a good friend to others. You need to have a good sense of what is practical, what is logical, what is dependable, and have a good idea of common sense. Are you nurturing to others? Are you looking after them and yourself in practical ways, like eating the right kind of food, making sure the shopping is done, making sure that the bills are paid, making sure that the mortgage is taken care of, or everything has been done in terms of responsibility of work? With the King of Pentacles, we've got someone who is very reliable. You can depend on this person or this aspect of you who is quite able to take care of practical affairs, possibly even an entrepreneur, very skilled at what they do, a company director, person who knows, somebody you would go to for advice in practical ways. So that's the Pentacles. Now, what I want you to do is to collect all the minor arcana together and shuffle them all up and put them face down in a pile. I want you to have a go at storytelling. This may seem a little silly at first, especially if you're on your own and you're saying it out loud. Do feel free to do this with a friend. It can be quite enlightening as to how other people see the cards, as well as how you do. They may add another dimension to your understanding of the card. But when you've put them all face down and they're all shuffled up, pick the first card and make a story of it. So I've just picked a card here like the Knight of Swords. So you could start off by saying, once upon a time, for example, there was a knight who charged off in search of fame and fortune. Then if you pick another card, I've got the Two of Swords here, but he didn't know which way to go. And pick another card, and the Ace of Cups, and he fell in love. So, I'm just giving you an example there. Have a go with it yourself. Just say something about the card that enables you to create a story. Go for as long as you like, use as many cards as you like, and as I said, if you've got a friend, it can be great fun for you to pass the cards backwards and forwards and each tell the next step of the story, and certainly will add a new dimension to your understanding of the cards. Now pick all the cards together, major and minor arcana, and put them down face up so you can see all the images. And again, we're going to do one of the exercises we did before, which is picking cards to represent the different phases and events in your life. So whereas before you had 22 cards to choose from to pick the significant events, now what I want you to do is to still pick the card that represents a significant event, but also pick other cards to surround it. So say for example there was your first job, pick a card also to represent your first boss and maybe the first person that you were friendly with in the work environment, or maybe somebody who was significant too, had a significant influence on you at work. If it's your first child, perhaps pick a card to represent him, maybe even brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews, your siblings, your family. If you got married, pick a card to represent maybe your partner's family. So spread the sort of information out so that you're not only just picking one card to represent an event, but also the people that surrounded that event, the influences that surrounded that event, and build up a whole image of that event using the tarot cards to represent different aspects of that particular influence. And then when you've worked on that for a while, the next exercise that we did was to pick cards to represent people that you know in your life. So again, put down the major and minor arcana cards together, face up, have a good look at all of them, and pick out people that represent people you know now. So pick your colleagues, your neighbours, your friends, your family, even acquaintances at work, maybe even people that you might meet every day, maybe a caretaker or a receptionist or a shop assistant that you don't know very well, but you have an inkling of the kind of person they might be. Pick a card to represent them and make a picture with the tarot cards of your life and the people that are in your life and the influences that surround you. You may very well be surprised that you see a pattern there, that the people you're drawn to tend to be people of a particular suit or a particular colour springs to mind. So that whereas all the people that you like seem to have a red, brown, orange, yellow tinge to it, they might be fiery, warm people, or maybe you're drawn to the blue, white images of the swords and the cups, and maybe they're cool or emotional. It's very interesting to have a look at the different patterns that this can represent. And then the third exercise is again putting the major and minor arcana cards together and placing them down face upwards and picking cards to represent different skills and careers. So again, finding a skill such as a nurse, a lawyer, a teacher. There were 22 cards in the major arcana, so here you've got a lot more to play with, so you can go on for a lot longer picking all sorts of different cards: librarian, shop assistant, receptionist, workman, garage mechanic, electrician, engineer, whatever. Have a good look at all the cards and see if you can find something, including people that are unemployed, student, people who aren't well, housewives, people who are wealthy and don't need to work, all those kinds of areas. See if you can find a skill or an identity behind each of those cards, something that you personally can relate to, and do that throughout both the major and minor arcana so that you've completed the whole deck. This is going to take you some time, but all these exercises, although they can be fun, they can even be games if you're playing them with somebody else. What they will do is get you personally involved with the cards on an intimate level, so you will get to know them, you will get to recognize them as some aspect of yourself or someone that you know that you can relate to. Another exercise using both the decks is to place them all down again face up and see if you can pick them to represent you yourself in different aspects. So pick a card to represent you when you get up in the morning, you when you go to work or make breakfast, you when you're with your friends, you when you're in a challenging situation. Do you turn into a wand person when you are in your car, but you're actually more of a sword person at work, but maybe a cup person with your family? Have a look at how you change together with the cards in all the different aspects of your life. Look at how you are with your siblings, your partners, and your acquaintances. Do you change significantly? It could be quite enlightening to your self-development and your understanding of yourself to see the picture and the images of you in all the different areas of your life. Now don't forget to carry on with your daily readings, shuffle both major and minor arcana, and draw a card for each day and to continue to make your notes. Also try some of the simple 3-card spreads, again using both major and minor arcana. When we mix these up and a major card comes up in a spread, it's likely that you'll find that the message is of particular significance. Sometimes when a person is experiencing a particularly challenging time, several major arcana cards can appear. This is likely to be a time the person won't forget in a hurry. Right, now let's look at putting the major and minor arcana together in some simple spreads and see how you get on with interpretation. This can often be quite difficult for beginners, but if we take it one step at a time, I'm sure you'll find it easy. So shuffle the major and minor arcana together, hold them face down. Now there are all sorts of different ways you can do this. You can take the top card from the top of the deck and just turn that over. You can spread all the cards out and pick the one you want. Some people have all sorts of little rituals that they do. It's entirely up to you whether you do that or not. Some people like to light candles, incense, meditate before they start. You will develop your own way of working with the cards, and that's entirely yours. But say, for example, we're just going to look at some elements that are within one of the most well-known spreads, which is a Celtic cross spread. And whilst we're not going to go into that today, let's have a look at some of the aspects of that. So the heart of the Celtic cross spread is the significator and the crossing card. So what you're doing first of all is picking a card to represent the person you're reading for, or you yourself, and this card represents them or you at the time of reading. So let's say, for example, we're going to pick a card and I've got the 10 of Pentacles, so that would represent somebody who's in a family situation, who's connected to their family, perhaps looking forward to going out with their family, or is having a family gathering, is settled with their family. But the crossing card is the card that is what is stopping their energy from progressing further, from flowing freely, from being everything that it could be in a good situation. So let's pick another card for that. And I've got the Queen of Cups that's crossing it, and what that could represent in a reading is somebody who is a little emotional, dreamy, maybe oversensitive. Maybe there's someone within the family or the person themselves is being oversensitive to a situation, and this is causing problems within the relationships within the family. Try this with different cards. Try it for yourself. You could even try this for people that you know, perhaps to shed an insight onto a problem that you know that they're having. So pick a card, say for somebody else that you know. Let's pick another card. I've got the King of Cups, so say I'm asking for a friend of mine about his work and how his work is going. And the King of Cups represents him, that he's a sensitive, kind, compassionate person, has a lot of responsibility at work. And the card that's challenging him is the Queen of Swords. So here we've got intellect, possibly even legal matters, but there are clearly issues of an intellectual nature that are challenging him at the moment, maybe filling in the tax return. Also possibly independence as well, so maybe there's a need to break free and be his own person. Or it could represent a woman in his life who has those kind of qualities that is perhaps being a bit challenging for him. Try it again, pick another card for you yourself and see another particular aspect of your life. What about what you're going to be doing at the weekend, for example? Should you go to that event? If you go to that event, what will happen? So let's pick a card for you. Let's say, for example, we've got the Queen of Pentacles, somebody that's connected to their practical sense, their common sense, their logic, nature, grounded. And it's crossed by justice, so again there's a legal issue there, the intellect, the mind, decisions that have to be made. Have a look at these cards. I mean, obviously these cards won't be the ones that you pick. I'm just showing them as an example of interpretation. At the heart of the Celtic cross spread, you've got the significator and you've got the crossing card. You've also got various other cards that can be quite enlightening to a person's situation at the time. So again, ask another question, think of it for yourself or a friend, pick the significator card. So on this one that I've just picked, I've got the Ace of Pentacles. So that would tell you that perhaps this reading is about money or career or work. And the crossing card is strength. So this person needs a little bit of patience. Whatever card you get, it might indicate that the opposite is actually happening. So maybe you're getting a card of patience, indicating that the person is being impatient, is anxious to resolve a situation or get somewhere within a situation. So they're getting a card to actually advise them on how they can get through the challenge. With the Celtic cross spread, one of the cards that you pick is the card that represents how this is affecting you on an inner level. So if I carry on along this theme, we had the Ace of Pentacles as a significator. The crossing card was strength, which indicates that perhaps the person is maybe being too patient, because you've actually got a card there that's about gentle strength. But the fact that it's in the crossing position, which is the challenge that is facing them, and this is where you have to think very carefully of the position of the card when you're reading, would suggest that this is the identification of the problem. So if gentle strength is the problem, the person is actually taking too long and is actually not moving ahead enough to resolve their situation or to fulfill whatever they want to fulfill in their lives. So when we pick a card now for what's going on inside the person on a very inner level, I've just picked the Four of Pentacles, and that would suggest that a person is keeping everything to themselves. So perhaps looking at it now, we've now got three cards. You've got the Ace of Pentacles, so this is possibly a work-orientated question. Maybe they've gone to a new job. The challenge card is strength, which would suggest that there's a lot of patience and gentleness going on. Maybe they're not being forceful enough. Underneath it all, they've got the Four of Pentacles, which is holding on and not being very open. And at the top, right above it, we've got the Seven of Cups, and this is about looking for other things, not being content with what you've got, or maybe looking elsewhere, being distracted by other things. So there's not really an awful lot of focus or drive. There's no wands going on here. Don't just look at the cards you've got when you're reading the cards. Look at what you haven't got as well. That can often be quite enlightening. So when you've put your cards out, whether you're doing the Celtic cross or any other spread, say you've got 5 cards or 6 cards all lined up representing different aspects of the question, like what job shall I go for, what will be the challenge there, what will the people be like, how will it affect my living standards, all those kind of things, what will I get in terms of promotion. When you look at all those cards, look at what is the absent cards. So if you've got all cups, but you don't have any wands, maybe there's not going to be a lot of energy at that work. So often what you haven't got will tell you as much as what you have got. So going back to this spread here, Ace of Pentacles, so we thought work orientated with a crossing card of the strength, and underneath a person keeping close to themselves, and outwardly maybe this isn't really for me, maybe looking elsewhere. So if you carried on, one of the other cards in that can be quite enlightening is how other people see you. And I've just picked the Five of Pentacles for this particular spread. So that would suggest that other people see the person as feeling left out, maybe a little unwanted, maybe a little sorry for himself perhaps. Let's pick another card to represent a person's hopes and fears. And that can be quite enlightening. Again, we've got here the Eight of Cups, and this represents somebody walking away from past pain, having left something behind. So this would give you quite a picture. You're building up a whole picture here on the person that you're reading for. This is possibly someone that started a new job, that is holding back, he's not getting involved in everything due to the nature of his past. He's let something go that he is still a little distracted with and a little drawn back into, and is in the process of moving on. So perhaps with time things will get a little better. Hopes and fears. A card to pick for hopes and fears is always an enlightening card and sheds great light onto the person's inner feelings and inner aspirations. Say for example we've picked the Ace of Pentacles again. This could represent that somebody's hope is for a new job, a new work opportunity. But because it's in the position of a hope and fear, it can also mean that they're a little bit scared of new changes, new opportunities. The most important thing when you're doing these spreads, though, is to see what it feels to you. Don't keep going back to what does that mean, what did it look in the book and said this was the interpretation. It's very much about what you feel, and on occasions when I've done readings, I've looked at cards and they have meant something quite significantly different to the traditional meaning, so it really is important to go on your intuition. Try these kind of cards using different questions and see what answers you come up with. Perhaps you'll be inclined to add a few cards. Sometimes when you're using the cards intuitively, it helps to just pick several cards for a particular question. So say for example you've got the crossing card and the challenge that represents the challenge in front of the person, and you pick one card and it tells you one thing, but you feel you need a few more cards to really get an impression, then pick a few more cards if that's how you feel you work best. Sometimes when we go into the past of a situation or the future, that might mean just putting down cards until you get a real image in your mind of what's coming up. Another exercise you can to intuitively interact with the cards is to just ask a question and just put the cards down and see what answer comes to your mind. Forget actually thinking about what the cards mean. Just put the cards down. You can do that one at a time, or just go one after another and see if an image forms in your mind or an answer comes to you. Practice this with different cards. Sometimes people can work best with less images, so you could even try that with playing cards and see what happens. Another thing to do is to place the cards face down and try and imagine or visualize what the card is that you're about to pick up. So shuffle the cards before you put them down, put them face down, go to pick a card and see if you can intuitively connect with that card. If you can't see clearly what it is, try and visualize or sense whether it is earth, air, fire or water, whether it's major or minor, whether it's an ace or a 5 or a 10. So narrow it down a little bit and see what you get. You may be surprised that after a period of time of doing that, you'll start to improve. That's a very good way of opening your intuition with the cards. Now we're going to do a meditation now to connect with both the major and minor arcana. So I want you to put your cards down and settle down in a nice quiet place and just relax. Take a few deep breaths. Clear your mind. And let's go on a meditation, on a journey through the tarot. Visualize you're walking down a path and you can feel the ground beneath you. And paved in the ground are pentacles. These represent the earth that you walk on, what you need to carry out your life purpose, the tools of your trade. You need to eat. You need to sleep, you need to exercise, and you need to fulfill your life potential, and the earth is where you have come to do that. So see your life path as stretching out in front of you, paved with pentacles, and feel your feet as you tread down on each of the pentacles, as the ground beneath your feet your basis, your solid, practical grounding. And as you carry walking along your path, you feel a fresh breeze of fresh air sweeping through your body and your soul. And this gives you ideas about your direction, about where you should go. It clears your mind of your worries. And it gives you dreams and hopes and thoughts of what you're going to do with your life. And you feel filled with vigor and energy, so you walk a little faster. And as you walk a little faster, the sun comes out in its strength and warms you. And you feel yourself getting warmer with the energy of your walking forward and the energy that you're putting into fulfilling your life, into going to your destiny. And you stop by a stream, and there's a cup by the stream, and you fill it with cool, clear water and drink the water for which you're deeply grateful, and you think how beautiful the world is, how beautiful your life is, how much you love the opportunity that you have, that others have. And the water fills you with love of yourself and others and the world around you. And continuing along your path, you meet a person with his head in the air, who's walking not knowing where he's going, and he's singing and dancing and doesn't seem to mind where he goes. Get a real sense of who this person is. Is he innocent and carefree? Does he not care about the consequences? How does that make you feel? When you move on, you meet a magician, skillful and confident. He comes across as somebody you would go to for advice, but you don't know whether to trust him. What do you think? You come a bit further down the road to a woman behind a veil. You sense that she has answers to secret questions. Questions from your heart of hearts. Feel free to ask her what you want. Moving on from the High Priestess, you encounter a woman in a field crowned with flowers. She seems to be the personification of nature herself, and you feel drawn to sit at her feet, and you feel welcomed and loved by her. After some time you move on, and you encounter a man sitting on a throne. He has an air of authority about him. He is used to being obeyed. What do you ask him? Moving on from the Emperor, you encounter another man, this time with religious robes. He too has an air of authority about him. What advice do you think this person can give you? Moving on, you encounter two women, fascinated by each other, involved in their own world. However, around them you sense there is movement and change. How do you see the path of love in your life? Is this something you are drawn to, or is it something you shun? What do the lovers have to teach you? Moving on, you see a man in a chariot. He is holding the reins, confident in control of two creatures who are pulling in opposite directions. Do you understand that challenge? Do you understand the need of being at the center and in balance when there are different things going on in your life? If you don't, ask him for advice. Moving on, you see a woman very gently holding open a lion's mouth. With such gentleness and softness, you wonder how she can do that, and she looks up at you and smiles and explains the kind of strength that comes from perseverance, patience, a gentle kind of strength. And as you move along down the path, the landscape around you becomes a little more isolated and a little more barren and a little darker. And ahead of you, you see a cloaked man holding a lantern for which the light is most welcome to you. And he smiles at you, and you recognize that you too are holding a lantern. Perhaps you weren't always aware of this lantern, but it's always been there. It's the light of your own inner wisdom. Spend some time connecting with your own inner guide. Moving on, the landscape becomes a little brighter and you see a wheel turning, and the wheel speaks to you without words of change and the opportunities for growth that change brings, and the wheel of life that you are now on, ever turning, ever moving. What kind of opportunities would you like to bring into your life now? And moving on, you see a person sitting holding a set of scales and a sword. And you know that inevitably there are consequences to all of your actions, and that facing those consequences and the truth of your whole being is much better than to avoid it, because one day or another that truth will dawn upon you. So this is something to embrace. Moving on, you see a hanged man hanging upside down from a tree, and at first you seem disturbed by this until you realize that the person is totally at peace with themselves and smiling and has an air of light about his being. What does the hanged man have to teach you? Spend some time dwelling on this image. Moving on, you see the figure of death. How do you see him? What do you do when you are faced with death? Is this something you see as an end or a beginning? Is this someone you feel welcomed by, familiar to? Find your own place within your heart of how you feel about death. And moving on, you come upon an angel with 2 cups, pouring liquid from one into another. 1 foot in the water, 1 foot on the land, and you feel a sense of healing and peace, harmony and balance. Let that wash over you and heal you. Moving on, you see an image of a creature, a fairly disturbing creature, towering above 2 individuals who look very unhappy, with chains around their neck. But you can see that if they took the chains off, they could move away, and yet they don't. Ask yourself if you've ever felt that way. Ask yourself what advice you would give them. Ask yourself what courage it needs to remove the chains. And do you have chains in your own life that you need to let go of? Moving on, you see a tower beginning to crash down from a lightning bolt. You can see the turmoil, you can see the destruction, but you can see that the foundations were shaky and that it would have come down of its own accord at any time. And so you know that it's time for the tower to be rebuilt. And so you see it as a bit of a house that's outworn and needs demolishing so it can start again. Does this disruption, this violence of this structure crashing down disturb you? And then moving on, you see a beautiful star in the sky. And you feel hope. Invigorated and encouraged by this image, you move on and see the moon. What does the light of the moon awake in your inner self? And from the light of the moon, opening your sense of intuition and psychic ability, dawns the light of a brand new day, bringing with it clarity, positivity, joy and understanding, and you move forward feeling much more whole than when you started out, having gone through the events in your life and the challenges in your life with a new understanding. And you see an angel in the sky with a trumpet, and people awakening out of the boxes of confinement of their lives, awakening to new possibilities, letting go of old, outworn structures and embracing new life. And you see the world dancer, and you feel that all the world around you is dancing, for after all, we are all the soul of the world. Then join hands with all these figures that you've come across as they come together in one huge circle of life, and realize that you are both within and without the world. The world is the dance of life, the highest potential in the human experience, awareness and freedom, whole and complete. We can all move forward without fear, but with understanding. And remember, you alone are the storyteller of your own life, and you create your own legend. And when you're ready, slowly open your eyes, be aware of where you are, and dwell on all the images and feelings that you've experienced in this meditation.